So I asked you to do 9 and 10. All right. These are just like the ones that we did last week. All right. And just like the ones that were on your quiz. Okay. So let's look at these two together. Now, first one, it says angle B is congruent to angle D. Okay. Why do I know angle B is congruent to angle D? It's given. They're already marked. When they're already marked in the image, we're going to put given. Okay. Let's look at the next one. This one says BEA is congruent to CED. That's talking about these two angles right here. What are those two angles called when we're given these two angles? They're vertical angles, okay? Whenever we have vertical angles, they're going to be congruent. Vertical angles is my answer. So pay attention to those middle letters. So see how E is the middle letter on both of those? All right. Then finally, AB is congruent to CD. Why do I know that? That's also given. All right. Those are marked right here on the triangles. Okay. So I have two sets of angles and a set of sides. So what are the two options that it can be for this one? It can be angle, angle, side, or no, or angle, side, angle. Okay. This one is that side in between the two angles. Is the side in between the two angles? No. So this one is angle, angle, side. Okay? Perfect. Okay? All right. This next one. All right. What does this symbol mean right here? Oops. That's supposed to be for the two lines right here. That means parallel. So this time it says AB is parallel to CD. Okay? Whenever we have the two parallel lines, what kind of angles does it create? What do we say? How do I know that these two are congruent? When we're working with parallel lines, what kind of angles does it create? Alternate interior. Okay? So BAC is congruent to DCA because they're alternate interior angles. Okay? Perfect. Well, now, next one. How do I know BCA is congruent to DAC? Those are given. Then how do I know AC is congruent to itself? Anytime something's congruent to itself, it's reflexive property. Now, this one again, I have two sets of angles, one set of sides. Is the side in between the two angles? It is. So which one is this? Angle, side, angle. Okay? Perfect. There's that one. Now let's go to the next page. All right. Okay, this next one, what do we notice that we have to fill in now? Yeah, all it gives us, all right, listen, all it gives us is the bottom box. It only gives us the last statement and the last reason. Okay? Don't make this harder than it has to be, okay? This can be, I'm just looking at everyone. I'm not just saying you. Now, on these, we do have to come up with our statements, okay? But these are going to be very simple, okay? It's going to be more simple than you think. Now, when we do this, first thing that I always want you to do, all right, is look if it says anything up here, okay? Does it give us anything up here on the top? It doesn't, okay? But now, if it doesn't give you anything on top, let's go to the example, and are anything marked? Is anything marked? Okay, so let's start with B and D, okay? So those are, yep, just one second. we're going to be talking about the angles. So if I start with angle B, what angle is angle B going to be congruent to? D. So I'm going to put that on top. How do I know that these are congruent? These are just given. Perfect. Is there anything else marked on the triangle above? The sides. So what two sides? BE and ED, okay. And what's my reason? Given. All right. Now, I'm not going to be picky if you put the lines above the letters, okay? But I want to make sure that when you mark angles, you put the angle sign, okay? So you don't have to worry about putting the little lines above the sides, but I really want you to make sure you're putting those angle marks. All right? So this last box, we got to figure out. There's nothing else marked, okay? But how can we figure out if it's going to be an angle or a side? Now, how can we figure that out? Why do you say ASA? On the bottom, it already tells us it's angle, side, angle. So I have one set of angles here, so I'm going to put an A. I have one set of sides here, so what does it have to be? Two congruent angles. Now, it's got to be two congruent angles. Now, just listen. Looking at this, okay, if this is ASA, please listen, you two. Weston and Noah. Okay, I know you're not talking about this. When we work on this, when it's angle, side, angle, okay, that side has to be in between the two angles. So am I going to be talking about angle A and angle C? No. So what two angles am I going to be talking about? Yeah. These two angles right here. Can I name it angle E? No. Because there's two angles of E. Okay? So let's go ahead and name it angle BEA is congruent to angle DEC. Now, I went ahead and drew them, and I drew the congruent signs. How do I know these two are congruent? What kind of angles are they? They're vertical angles. Perfect. So I'm going to put vertical angles. And there's our last A. Okay? Perfect. It's vertical angles. All right, how do we feel about that? Just use what's marked. You can do a lot of this on your own. Now, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the next one. The next one, all right, listen. The next one, it gives us something on top. Okay? This time it tells us that BC is parallel to AD. Just listen. Whenever it gives us something on top, that's always going to go in that extra box it gives us. Okay? So in that extra box it gives us, all we're going to put on the top is BC is parallel to AD. Just what it tells us on top, right? It says BC is parallel to AD. Okay? And what is my reason for this? How do I know that these are parallel? Because it gives it to us. Given. Okay? Now, we have to, in our next box with this one, what do we talk about when we have parallel lines? What kind of angles does it create? Alternate interior. So I'm going to go ahead and put that as my reason because I know it has to be alternate interior. Okay, you can just put alt interior. Now, how can I figure out which two angles are congruent? It's not going to be B and D. Okay? Well, do A and C... Here, just let me talk. It wasn't just you. When we do this, okay? Does A and C, do they have more than one angle? They do. Now look, these are already marked, so it can't be these two angles. So what does that tell me? It tells me that it has to be the other angle of C and the other angle of A. Now, how can I name, who can tell me how we can name those two angles? No. Oh, C, you said C. It can't be CAB.
BCA, BCA.
Here. No, he's not. No, he's not. BCA and
one would be, I think,
DAC.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how we're talking about these angles right here that we just drew. Okay. I'm going to put the arrow, these two angles that I just drew. Now, let's go to the next box. Is anything already marked? We already talked about those other two angles are marked, so let's name those two. How can I name the two angles that were already marked? No, I cannot do A and C because there's more than one angle. I can do BAC is congruent to DCA. And how do I know these are congruent? Given. Is anything else given above? The two sides. So let's go ahead and name those two. So what are the two sides? And how do I, what's my reason? Given. So do you notice how 3 of these 4 boxes they're given? A lot of the time they're going to be given, okay? And it's going to make it really easy on you. The biggest thing that I would pay attention to is make sure this final reason, see how this is AAS? Make sure there's 2 angles and a side. Okay? Do we all get that written down? Okay. Hurry up and write that down. Okay. Flip to 13. All right. I want you to try 13 on your own by working with them. 13 on your own. Try 13 on your own. Yeah. Just look at what it says above. Look at. So use what's above. You can use previous ones to help you. That's what you got the packet for.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So besides, so what do you think is the first angle here? This one.
It's not the marked one. Just think of it bisects.
Yeah, I know it's not the bisects. D and B, I believe.
It's bisecting an angle.
Bisecting angle DAB. Wait, BCD.
Mm-hmm. No. Well, yes, it bisects BCD. So what 2 angles does that give you?
BCA, BCA.
Uh-huh. There you go. Mm-mm. Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's looking at the same answer.
Mm-hmm. You can try that one on your own. We're gonna get to that one. It's gonna be just like number 3, I think. All right, we're talking, so I'm assuming you guys are finished. You just can't tell yourself that. You tell yourself that, and then you're gonna be lost. Huh? Anyways, well, I'm gonna go over it. What? I cannot read that. It looks somewhat right. I just can't see your angles or sides. I still can't see them. We're gonna go over it. You'll be able to check. All right, go ahead and sit down. Okay, let's look at this one. Now, what does it tell us at the top? Yeah. All right, let's not talk about that. We're talking about math. Oh, well, then how about you just ignore them? Well, I can't even hear them because I hear you. Okay. At the top, it gives us that AC is an angle bisector of angle BCD. So what I'm going to put in the top box is just AC bisects angle BCD. Okay, and I'm just going to write it to the side so you can see it. The AC bisects that angle. Now, what's my reason for this? Given. Okay, when I have the AC bisects the angle of BCD, what does it do to this whole angle of BCD? What does an angle bisector do? Huh? It divides it into what? It divides it into two congruent angles. So these two angles are going to be congruent to each other. So I just need to name them. So how can I name those two angles, Austin? Perfect. Angle DCA is congruent to angle BCA. And what is my reason for this? Definition of angle bisector. Perfect. Okay, there we go. Now, we have those two boxes done. Now let's see, is there anything that it's already marked in the two triangles? Yeah, we can talk about the angles. There's two angles of A. So since there's two angles of A, we can't just name it A. It has to be angle BAC, and it's congruent to angle DAC. And this is given. Is there anything else marked? BC is congruent to DC. How do I know this? Given. Perfect. Okay. Now, here's the nice thing. I'm pretty sure if we look at number two, oh wait, no, that's not the exact same thing. Never mind. Ignore my train of thought. It wasn't going anywhere. You're not supposed to agree on that. All right, let's go to 14, because this is where people are going to get confused. They get confused on the perpendicular one. Okay? Use this one on number 14, and you can kind of flip to your page of 3 and 4 on questions 3 and 4, and you're going to notice it's going to be very similar to number 4 on page 2. Number 3, notice on number 3. Number 3 has HL. What does this one have, though, for our reason? AAS. So this one's going to be very similar to number 4. Okay? So you could always use this packet to kind of help you figure out what's going to happen. Now, before we do anything, is there anything already marked? No, not yet. Well, let's talk about the marked angles. So what two angles are already marked? Since there's just one angle, we can name them angle A and angle C. So I'm just going to put angle A is congruent to angle C, and what's my reason? Given. Okay, so I already have that angle down. Now let's talk about these boxes. What does it give us on the top? That's not parallel. Perpendicular. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the first box. And what's my reason for this? Given. Okay. Now, what happens when something tells us that they're perpendicular? What does that automatically tell us? No, it's perpendicular. They're right angles. Thank you, Layla. Look, we have that these are right angles. So, in that next box, let's look at number. What did we put on that number 4? See how it has ADB and CDB are right angles? That's talking about these two angles. Our letters might be different, but we're going to put that same thing pretty much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to name them the two angles that I just marked as 90 degrees. So I'm going to say angle CDB and angle ADB are right angles. Cut it out. Okay? So they're right angles. And what was that reason? No, we cannot have two givens in a row. Yeah, so it says perpendicular lines form right angles. You can just put definition of, and you can just put the perpendicular sign. So that's just definition of perpendicular. I'll just accept that because we're just describing perpendicular lines. Now, if they're both 90 degrees, can we say that they're congruent? Yeah, they have the same value. So in the next box, I'm just going to put angle CDB is congruent to angle ADB. What we just wrote above, the same two angles are congruent, okay? And this is just going to be definition of right angles. Okay, since they're both 90 degrees, they're both right angles, they're going to be congruent. That's the HL one. Yeah. Okay. So now I have that marked, okay? I have a set of angles here and a set of angles here, and I need to find sides. Based on the triangle above, can I say that these two sides are congruent? No, there's no way of doing that because it's not marked. Well, does it tell us anything about bisecting a C or D being a midpoint? No, so I can't say that those are congruent because it doesn't tell us midpoint or bisect. So how can I say that these are congruent? So what would I put as my top reason or my statement? Yeah, BD is congruent to itself. BD. And this, whenever something's congruent to itself, it's reflexive property. Okay? Perfect. All right, do we all have that written down? No, not yet.
Are we on the 15 and 16?
You give me 1 second.
Two sets of parallel lines. Wait.
Here you go, Colton.
Are we
hmm
on 15 and 16?
This must be a D. It's the same thing as this. You get that down, Colton, now? All right. Skip 15 and 16
What?
and do 17 and 18 on your own. I'll give you guys 5 minutes and then we'll talk about this. So do 17 and 18. Those will be the last ones we do today. 17 and well, luckily these are the last two we do today. 17 and 18. Did you not just hear me? I said skip them.
Are we gonna ever do them?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
We don't have any more angles.
So you got to figure out what two angles. All right. Work on these.
What are they whispering about back there?
Use other ones to help you out. You can't put sides here.
What? I mean, it reads side angle side.
No, it doesn't have to follow that though.
But then, what else?
Well, it bisects an angle, so you need to use.
Well, how am I going to find angles? I mean, none of them are marked.
Well, look, AC bisects angle BCD, so that's what it's going to tell you. So what two angles are congruent now? Well, so show me where angle BCD is.
BCD.
Yeah, so where's the angle of BCD?
Right here.
Okay, so what happens for an angle bisector?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. What does it do when it bisects this angle of BCD? It splits it in what? Yeah. So which two angles are congruent now? Those are sides. Yeah. Well, you just said it splits BCD in two. So how can I name those two angles of C? Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you mark those two angles with your pencil, Kennedy? Or you do it, Colton. Yeah. How can, yeah, so now it's split it in half. So how can I name this angle right here?
Angle C.
Because there's two angles, so you got to use the 3 letters. Yeah.
Angle CAB.
No, because that's talking about up here. Because remember that middle letter is where the angle is.
Angle CB.
It's got to be 3.
Angle DCA.
No, because that's talking about the whole angle of C. But you're so close.
A.
Mm-hmm.
Angle CBA.
The middle letter is where the angle is.
ACB.
ACB and
BCA.
that's the same angle.
The
So
ACD.
yes, there you go. There's your 2 angles. That's fine. All right, I know some of you are finishing up, but I just want to make sure we can get through this together. Okay? We'll get there. We're going to do it together.
I can't do how you say it's made yourself because that's already marked.
It's not already marked. All right, let's look at this one. On 17, it says AC bisects BCD. Okay? When it tells us that at the very top, all right, that's what I'm going to put in the very first box. And what is my reason going to be? Given. Perfect. Now, when I have the AC bisects angle BCD, what does that do to angle BCD? It splits it in half, so it splits into 2 congruent angles. So how can I name those 2 angles, James? No. Angles. All right, we got to cut the extra chit-chat. Listen, we got to cut out the extra chit-chat. That's why you guys are getting lost, is because you're not listening. Well, this is something else. So, what is my reason for this, James, now that I named those 2 angles? I asked James.
What do you want, James? Still my answer.
Okay. It is. You tell me, what can I put for the next box? Now, whose problem is it? Okay.
I know D-A. I can tell you.
All right. No, I'll have Layla do it because that's who you got it from. Layla, what did you do for your next box? Huh? DC is congruent to. And why do I know DC is congruent to BC? Because it's given. These are already marked. Now, finally, since this is side angle side, I need one final side. Austin, where can I get that final side? Did anyone figure out the final side? Yeah, Nikis? I know. AC is congruent to itself, and this is reflexive property. Perfect. Okay? Now let's look at the next one before we run out of time. This one, it gives us 2 givens. So we need to make sure we split these, okay? So the first one, I have AB is parallel to DC. What's my reason for this? Given. We always put given in that first box. Now, I'm going to put my other given. All right. Shh. I'm going to put my other given here. This is AC is a segment bisector of BD. So I'm going to say AC bisects BD. Okay? And what's my reason for this one? Given. Because it gives us that up top. Now, when I have AB is parallel to DC, what kind of angles do we say it gives us? No. Alternate interior. So I'm going to put alternate interior angles. Okay, so when I have that AB is parallel to CD, these lines are parallel. What two angles are congruent when I put that angle transversal right here? Huh? Angle C and angle A are going to be congruent. There's only one angle of C and A, so I'm just going to put one letter. And those are going to be my congruent angles. So this is going to be my congruent angle right here and right here. Perfect. Now, I have AC bisects BD. When AC bisects a segment, what is that going to tell me? What does it do to segment BD? It splits. Oops, I gave you the wrong angles on accident. Yes, it splits BD in half. Okay? I'm sorry. Yep. So let's just finish this one. Then DE is now congruent to EB. And what's my reason for this one? It's not given because we can't have two givens in a row. This is just definition of bisector, segment bisector. Now, I'm sorry. I gave you the wrong angles on this one. This isn't C and A. It should be B and D. My fault. I wrote the angle transversal in the wrong spot. I'm sorry. It's B and D. Okay? Now, what is my last box going to be for this one? It has to be another side because it's side angle side. It's going to be good. AB is congruent to CD. And why do I know this? It's given. Okay? There's no homework today. We'll work on some of this tomorrow.
I don't have to worry about that. You worry about doing sister somewhere.